Well, the people of Canada, you might not know this, but you are now the guarantor of the safety of the people of Ukraine. That's right, the Justin Trudeau government. Once again, telling you what you are responsible for and stripping you of your willingness to participate in that discussion. Did you even know that you are now responsible for the safety of the people of Ukraine? That's right, that's from the Trudeau administration. Someone who follows the crazy Trudeau administration and has spent a lot of years analyzing Justin Trudeau before he ever became prime minister, is David Krayden. He writes at the Post-Millennial and Human Events, also has a YouTube channel, Krayden's Writes. And David joins us for the first time here on Redacted. I think, David, we've covered a lot of your articles and your reporting over the years here on the show, so welcome into Redacted. Great to see you.
Well, it's so nice to join you today, Clayton.
So tell me first of all, let's just focus on that story, which is, of course, around the idea of Justin Trudeau telling Volodymyr Zelensky in this big meeting that they just had that the Canadians will protect the safety of Ukraine. Can you walk me through what he said?
Well, the problem is with what he said and hasn't been reported, and the Prime Minister's office is not revealing any more details. And unfortunately, the opposition yesterday completely ignored this. And it's been reported maybe once or twice in the mainstream media. But Justin Trudeau has made Canada a guarantor. And this is, once again, people are scratching their heads and saying, what does this mean? What is a guarantor of Ukraine's safety specifically during the Russia-Ukraine war? Sounds very dangerous to me. I don't know how Canada can guarantee Ukraine's safety during this war. It's already given Ukraine $8.5 billion in aid, a lot of that military. It's loaned them our Leopard tanks, which, of course, is a bit like loaning the Brits and the Russians Sherman tanks in the Second World War. I don't think we're going to get them back. So we have given them all kinds of military equipment. And what does it mean? Trudeau has not explained what it means. To me, we're incrementally marching towards a nuclear war with Russia because Canada cannot guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty. But as a member of NATO, Canada is essentially dragging in the whole alliance into this guarantee.
Right.
So is NATO now a guarantor of Ukraine's safety and security? This is the question I think that needs to be answered quickly, because I believe we are on a pathway to war with Russia. We have been for the last 8 months at least. NATO is provocative, but for Trudeau to issue this declaration is, to me, more than provocative. It's insane.
Well, we just heard from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at the White House late last week, meeting with President Biden, and specifically talking about raising the level of GDP devoted to the war and war spending and defense spending, making sure that all NATO members are elevating their amount of spending to guarantee the success of Ukraine, make sure that Ukraine doesn't become an outpost for Russia. So what exactly does that mean? I mean, as a NATO country, you're not involved in the war. You get to pretend like you're not involved in the war, but you're actively involved in the war. You're funding it. You're providing boots on the ground through special forces and training and weapons. How are you not involved in the war?
Well, Canada is certainly involved in the war. It's financing the war, for God's sake. And we should be looking to a way to end the war, because it's in everybody's interest to end this war, especially Ukraine, because there are hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians being thrown into the meat grinder of the front line. We're not seeing any of this on television or on the internet. Thank God you've got a correspondent in Russia who's actually showing us what war correspondents used to do. I know you guys were talking about this the other night, but we don't see any clips from the actual war. We listen to Zelensky saying massive counteroffensive on the way. And to me, it's reminiscent of the propaganda and the BS that came from the First World War, when there was constantly big push at the front, hundreds of thousands of people dying, not being reported. The carnage of that war is not being reported, and neither is the carnage of this war. This war needs to end, and Trudeau has got to stop giving billions of dollars. I think per capita, Canada has given more to Ukraine than the United States has. And there's an obsession on behalf of Trudeau with this war because it's a very convenient distraction for him. Every time he wants people to think about anything but domestic policies, rising inflation, rising interest rates, he goes overseas, usually makes a fool of himself. Think about India. Think about London, the funeral for the Queen. Think about every other time.
Georgia Maloney and Poland. I mean, the list is fairly endless at this point. When you mentioned the opposition hasn't been outspoken against Trudeau on this issue, are they I mean, to me, whenever there's silence, there's complicity. So if the opposition in Canada is not speaking out about this, are they complicit in this? The idea
the opposition's completely complicit, much as most of the Republicans are in the United States. I mean, we've got Republican senators who are the biggest backers, the biggest warmongers. Just as in Canada, they are afraid. The conservative opposition is afraid to condemn the continued financing of this war and the continued support to keep this war going. Not a single question yesterday in the question period, which I attended, about Trudeau not only giving another $500 million to Ukraine, but making Canada guarantor. Does this not bother Canadians? Does this not bother the opposition that we have put ourselves in this position? I don't know how we can possibly fulfill that role, short of declaring war on Russia. But that's how insane Trudeau's thinking is right now.
Is this an executive order or some sort of, he can do this by fiat? He doesn't need the rest of the government to involve themselves in making Canada the guarantor of Ukraine? He can just do this willy-nilly. And I guess we fully don't know what it means yet. It almost sounds like having like a godfather role. Like if the parents pass away, Canada steps in as the parent of Ukraine in a way.
Well, that's a good analogy because we don't specifically have executive orders in our Canadian parliamentary system. But the Prime Minister has immense unilateral powers, just as the President in the United States can make executive orders in this way. That's exactly what Trudeau's done. He has issued a declaration from the Prime Minister's office without consulting even his cabinet or his caucus, let alone the House of Commons. So Parliament has had no say in this, has not even looked at the declaration in writ large, has no idea what the specifics are. And unfortunately, the official opposition is not following through on the role it should be playing in this. And the usual mainstream media in Canada is not even reporting this. I've seen 2 reports on this, in addition to my own, which I did for Post Millennial. And I wrote a column about this for Substack, but nobody else is even talking about this issue.
Well, that's why we're thrilled to have you here on the show, and hopefully you'll come back and keep a watchful eye on the craziness that is Canada at this moment and what this Trudeau regime is doing to the people of Canada. It's really amazing. You and I were talking, offline a little bit about this, but it's just amazing to watch the quick deterioration, and it's happening in real time in Canada. It really is disturbing to see it unfolding so quickly.
Well, on the domestic front, Trudeau recently made the outrageous statement that parents should have no say in whether children under 16 decide to transition to another gender. That has nothing to do with parents. And he described that as a far right policy, that parents should have some say, some inclination, some knowledge of this going on. These are huge consequential decisions. And Trudeau's saying the state now owns your kids, not the parents. This to me is another descent into political madness that we're seeing from a prime minister who is increasingly authoritarian and completely disregards all Canada's democratic traditions going back to the Magna Carta, 800 years ago. He's ignoring so much of what made Canada a strong democratic country. And I think you're seeing the same thing in the United States, but I think Trudeau is just taking it much faster.
It's really disturbing. It's the transhumanism of the World Economic Forum, and he's, of course, one of their exemplary junior leaders, as Klaus Schwab repeatedly reminds us of that.
Yes.
David, great to see you. Thank you for your reporting on this, and we hope you'll come back real soon. Thank you so much for this.
I would love to come back anytime you offer.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.